And welcome to Newsline Live. We are, as always, broadcasting from the Newsfirst studios in Dorset Street in Colombo. Slightly different surroundings this evening. Now then, this evening I'm joined by my colleague, Charlene Benedict, and he's kindly agreed to come on the program. Our guest this evening has been unavoidably detained or delayed. Professor Tisavitarna. Now then, so let me introduce you to Charlene Benedict. Although, Charlene, you don't need any introduction. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Faraz, and good evening to all our viewers out there.
Now then, Charlene, the talk of the town, basically, at the moment throughout Sri Lanka, surely must be the information that the World Health Organization have agreed to give us about 20%. Translating to around 4 million doses of the vaccine. And it's due in March, isn't it?
Yes, of course. This vaccine, the dates are still not exactly certain, but there are discussions that are underway. The Minister of Health, special appointees by the President have been appointed to discuss these matters. And of course, like you quite rightly pointed out, the World Health Organization has agreed to provide us vaccination for 20% of the population. And recently it was reported yesterday or the day before, I believe, that we are also looking at maybe getting this vaccine at a concessionary rate from countries like India, which will be producing or at least purchasing this vaccine for massive amounts. Also for us, today, another monumental thing happened in the United Kingdom. They approved this vaccine that was produced by scientists at the Oxford University. This vaccine was given approval in the United Kingdom, and the United Kingdom has already ordered 100 million doses of this vaccine. But of course, each person has to get 2 jabs of the vaccine.
So they more or less cover the entire population anyway.
Well, 50 million citizens of the United Kingdom can get vaccinated under the current orders that they have placed. But of course, they will be increasing this as well.
But India itself has announced that they'll be vaccinating around 300 million of their citizenry, which is quite good news. And of course, if Sri Lanka can piggyback on that, then all the better. But whilst this is all going on, we need to be aware that in the US, the FDA, the Federal Drug Administration Service, they are the regulator, and they have given very unusually a blanket immunity to the 2 manufacturers of the vaccine.
Right.
And this itself is a very unusual state of affairs. The immunity covers the 2 companies for unintentional after effects, because obviously they have not been, they've not had enough time to do the normal testing and so on and so forth. And clearly this is because I think the entire world +1 are pushing the manufacturers all over the world to come up with a solution, because with what's this figure now about a worldwide death toll or the affected?
The worldwide death toll are, of course, in the millions.
Yeah.
Although here in Sri Lanka we had even 1 death is too much, but comparative to other countries, we've handled this virus so far quite well. But of course, one of the concerns that were raised, especially by the Sri Lanka Medical Association, its chairman, Dr. Indika, one of the concerns that he raised was with the introduction of these vaccines, or at least with people starting to speak about these vaccines, with people starting to see hope. And also, we have Ayurvedic doctors working on a local scale to try and boost the immunity of the citizens here, to come up with an indigenous solution to this matter. With all of these vaccines and indigenous medicine that are coming forth, people really start to take a step back on the measures that have already been put in place to curb the spread of this virus. These are 3 very simple things that have been repeated time and time again throughout the year, and I'm pretty sure all our viewers out there are sick of hearing these things. But still, this is, according to the doctors, quoted as our best defense against this virus.
Which
as
is
the saying goes, prevention is better than cure.
Indeed. This is the HFS business. The hands,
yes,
the face, and the space. If
exactly.
you put your hand out there, we can show our viewers that
1 meter distance.
Yes, we've got easily the 1 meter distance. And that's, of course, very critical. Along with the so-called season, we notice that there's a definite downturn, and the government is encouraging celebrations to be held only amongst family members. And I think Sri Lankans need to take this a bit seriously, because we tend to lead this island life, because of course we're an island, but we have that that sort of laid-back attitude. But in this case, we can't be lax at all, because it is a very serious situation.
And for those who wonder why quarantine measures weren't imposed extensively during this festive period, the justification on the part of the authorities was the fact that, well, we've been living with this virus for so long right now, and really coercing the people and putting them under lockdown and keeping them, you know, stuck in these areas is not really the best course of action. So instead, the health authorities said that this is kind of a pilot run. They are giving the people freedom. They're giving the people advice on how to conduct themselves during this time.
There's another little island in the world that tried that and found that they are now in Tier 4. I'm referring to the island of the United Kingdom. Because obviously much of Britain is in Tier 4, and London certainly is, and the restrictions are pretty tedious, to say the least. But they've had this other strain, and it's supposed to be more potent than the first. And so, whilst we're doing all this, Charlene, if we were to reflect on the unfortunate state of affairs 2020 has been for the whole world, and for Sri Lanka in particular, and we are, very concerned about Sri Lanka, obviously. We have a new, a fairly newish president who was elected in November, and just months into his term, in came along COVID-19. And so I wonder what, for you, as a youthful citizen of Sri Lanka, what are your thoughts on this? What bothers you the most?
Well, really, throughout, since I joined Newsfirst, of course, I've been more actively involved in the political scene and been more aware of things that happen. What I see is, especially with the popularity of social media and all the memes that are being shared, all the information, it's an infodemic. So much of information, it's hard to consume. People tend to believe things that they see on the web without any clarification. So false information is a big issue. But on the political front, especially with the rise of a new government, a strong government, as it was highlighted by political analysts, and this is not just my opinion, but I do see the logic in it. A strong government doesn't mean having the presidency and having having 2/3 in parliament, and if the provincial council elections is held, having a majority there and having a majority in local government councils. That does not mean strong government. No. Strong government comes from good administration, proper administration of the general public, and I believe Sri Lankans will remember what happened in 1978, the government from there on.
Yes.
When the United National Party, there was a massive majority, yes. And in the next election, they were defeated.
Way more than 2/3.
Exactly. It was 5/6.
Yeah.
It was 5/6. So one thing that if we do it right, what we should do at least is to learn from our mistakes. And
do you see that from a perspective of a young person? Do you see that happening?
Well, from the perspective of a young person, I would like to say that things are not in the best state.
As a sort of co-host of this program as well,
okay.
You know the form. We say it the way we see it,
right.
And some of these are inconvenient questions, and the answers are nevertheless the answers. So you can be upfront and open.
Well, on the question of how I feel about the current situation, of course, with COVID-19...
from a perspective of a youthful answer.
Well, people are going through tough times, and we here in Sri Lanka are kind of accustomed to always ask for things, you know, give me more, what can I get out of it? But I believe there's a famous saying from a past president of the United States, Franklin Roosevelt, if I'm not mistaken, but I stand to be corrected.
I think you are about to tell me about John F. Kennedy.
John F. Kennedy, yes. I'm sorry. So he said, you know, ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country.
Absolutely.
But living in Colombo and its suburbs and going through, especially the Gammad program, to these rural areas where we see people without water, people who know that giving this water that they have to their children will make their children kidney patients who will suffer extensively in the future and in the end die an agonizing death from kidney disease. So really when we sit here where we are in Colombo, in the suburbs, and do our cushy jobs, maybe some uncushy, but there is really nothing much to complain when we compare it with their plight.
I think we need to be aware of the people that our Gammad movement has discovered, and these are the forgotten people of Sri Lanka. And you don't have to travel too far out of Colombo to discover these forgotten people. On that note, lest we forget about the break, we are going in for a short break. We'll see you on the other side of this. Don't go away. After all, this is Newsline Live.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
Headlines first. Main sponsor.
UK regulators approve the use of the Oxford AstraZeneca COVID-19 vaccine. 3 Ukrainian tourists test positive for COVID-19. President draws attention towards hardships of those in Kabitigollaba. TNA loses control over Jaffna Municipal Council. Turmoil in numerous other local government agencies.
Headlines first. Main sponsor.
News First, Newsline with Faraz Shaukat Ali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in conversation with my colleague, Charlene Benedict. Charlene, now then, we were talking about what this year has been like. And of course, it's been, I feel...
bumpy ride?
Well, it's been a bumpy ride, but I also feel that with this new president and he got quite a majority. There was it would be fair, I think, to say that there was a sort of legitimate expectation, and there were sort of gilded opportunities which the president was sort of promising to accomplish. But of course, COVID came along, and whilst we can't blame everything on the COVID, he appears to me, for want of a better word, to be a rather unfortunate president. Some of it without, his beyond his control. Now then, when we look at the vaccine situation, again, now this is sort of, in a way, it's good news. The government have tried all sorts of things to. There are different views. Some countries went for closed, total lockdowns and so on, and harsh controls, and some of them seem to be getting ahead and so on. But in Sri Lanka, one of the things that they did was, as we saw, I think, was it yesterday, when we tried a trial of bringing in some tourists this time from Ukraine. And now we find that 3 of those visitors have tested positive on their PCR. So this is what I mean about being unfortunate. It looks like that our stars are not in the right place.
Well, for us, a little bit of clarification on that incident about the 3 Ukrainian tourists testing positive for COVID-19. The Deputy Director of Health Services today spoke to the media and said that this was expected. I mean, our health authorities are competent enough to understand the situation. He said that this was expected. And thus, when this pilot project was being drawn up to bring in tourists to Sri Lanka to try and, reboot the tourism sector that we earn quite substantially on, as we are a beautiful island nation. So these incidents were expected. And there have been guidelines that have already been issued on how to deal with a situation like this. So it was the opinion of the Deputy Director General of Health Services that this situation is under control, that these people have been tested positive, and they have now been moved to treatment centers. The pilot project will continue.
That in a strange sort of way, that is, it's not good news, but it shows that Sri Lanka is prepared.
Exactly. And also, before the break, you mentioned about this new strain that has been identified in the United Kingdom. Yesterday, it was reported that this new strain has entered India, our closest country.
Yes.
And also, it has entered many Asian countries like Singapore, Japan. Many countries in the region have been infected by this new variant of the COVID-19 virus. Now, yesterday, we reported extensively on the dangers that surround this new variant. It's more potent, as you mentioned. It spreads faster. The effects of it are still completely unknown, because still studies are conducted into this virus because we don't fully understand it. But of course, I believe, or at least I hope, that the authorities are aware of these matters and that they have taken every precaution to prevent this. And yesterday, speaking to media after his promotion to 4-star general, General Shavendra Silva said that every precaution has been taken to prevent this new strain from entering the country. And given General Shavendra Silva's track record and his keeping of promises to the people, I'd opt to believe him.
And one of the things that I want to mention this specifically because Newsline Live is watched and followed by viewers from all over the world. We have regular viewers from the United States, particularly from, there's a group of people who follow us from Texas, many people from the Middle East and Australasia too. Now, one of the things that General Shavendra has always said is that the people are fellow citizens who are out there, who've gone out there to work in the Middle East and who want to come back. They are not forgotten, and neither has Newsline Live forgotten them either. We are very much mindful and thoughtful about them, and we appreciate all the work that they've done They're part of very vital component of this country's economy, and they're not forgotten. But we can see the several challenges that this government is facing in terms of controlling the quarantine centers and so on and so forth. They're increasingly more reliant on hotels and so on, but not everybody can afford to be paying quarantine guests
in a hotel.
Yeah, so the government is trying their best, and they have to be brought in stages. It's frustrating for some people, obviously, but just to make that point, that Newsline Live shares your concern, and you are all in our thoughts all the time. So we mentioned that, Charlotte.
Definitely, and I believe walking into the new year, there is hope with the new vaccines that have come about, but of course we must not grow complacent.
No, and that's the danger.
Conduct. And yes, that could actually compound the danger here in Sri Lanka. So far, I wouldn't say that we're the best country managing the COVID-19 outbreak in the world, but we have done well for our limited resources that we can't really. It's a subjective judgment
on those laurels, whatever they are. You know, that's subjective whether these are real laurels. Or
exactly. There are people who think that we've done well. There are people who think that we've done extremely bad.
Well, that comes to another bit of Sri Lankan outlook, which is that Sri Lankans are forever and a day great supporters of democracy and the real workings of democracy. And like you mentioned earlier, just because you have a 2/3 majority doesn't mean that that this is a dictatorship. 2/3 or
doesn't mean that you have a strong government.
Yes, strong government is only capable of being achieved when decisions that are made by the government are made with real thought for the people, and when they are all democracy-centric. So it is only then that we can have a strong government. The mere numbers in a 2/3 doesn't really mean much. As we've seen, and the Prime Minister will be more aware than anyone, because after 2 terms as the President and having won a war, he was unceremoniously sent back to Medamulana, only to make a comeback later. And it is a lack of delivery. As we come to the end of this program, what are your hopes and thoughts for the new year, for 2021?
Well, I do understand that Sri Lanka is divided politically, as any democracy would be. People have different political opinions, but in the end of the day, we always speak about building a government, building this government, this party's government, that party's government, but none of us really speak about really building the state, which is the country that we're all part of. Governments come and go, but the state is eternal. And if we focus more on developing our state, 3 arms of our state, the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, Sri Lankans have obviously become more politically activated, at least, with the advent of social media and so on and so forth. But the real danger lies in spread of misinformation, false information.
We need to all be aware that the biggest challenge we face in current times, apart from COVID, is the need to be made aware of real information, not false information.
So I believe the catch there is, it falls down to what we really do here in the news studio. So when we receive a piece of information, we always trace it back to the source. Because if, for example, if a person sees a crow lying dead on the ground, and the word goes by, it comes to us saying 7 crows have been killed on the ground.
Yeah.
So we really trace it to the source, and that is the key. You need to question your source when you are following news on social media or any other platform.
And you should because with the advent of so many WhatsApp groups and so on, you really need to know what you are sharing around.
Yes, just stay tuned to News First.
On that note, Charlene, you know, our long-suffering producer, Harshana, is calling for the end of the program, because it is time for the primetime news from News First. and well done for all the very hard work that Team Newsfirst has put in. And I'm sure that not only I, everybody else out there, our viewers, also appreciate that.
Thank you very much, Faraz. And of course, thank you to all our viewers for staying tuned to News First.
Absolutely. And that's the way it was on Newsline Live this evening. Take care. Have a wonderful evening ahead of you. And as always, God bless you.